Boy, do I love this camera. Today we're going to talk about my reasons why I think the Canon M50 is the best camera for social media creators, beginning videographers, and just general content creators like YouTubers. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Camilo and this is DKD21 Media. In this channel, we talk about ways to improve your production quality, and this little thing packs quite a production punch. That should be a tongue twister. Size and form factor. If you're a content creator, you don't really want to be carrying around a massive DSLR camera with your massive lens when you're trying to walk down your road to talk about your day, or when you're walking around with your 20 friends that don't even have Facebook and don't really understand this whole social media thing. So the fact that this has quite a small and compact form factor makes it quite ideal for those that want to make content on the go. So it's small enough for you to be able to vlog with just one hand. The grip might be small for some. If you are struggling with the grip, I suggest you get this cage by Small Rig. Not only does it actually increase the grip, but it also has a nice rail here for Arca Swiss plates and lots of holes and screws for attachments for microphones and lights, etc. I'll put the link down in the description below. Not only is the form factor small, but the size of the files that it produces is quite small. Smaller files makes it easier to store your content, and it also means you don't have to carry around 10 LaCie drives in your backpack. In one of my half-day shoots that I did with this camera, I shot about 30 minutes worth of footage, and it was about just less than 16 gigabytes. On my SONY a7 III, I took less footage, 12 to 15 minutes or so, and it was about 15 gigabytes of memory. So less footage taken and almost the same amount of memory. And additionally, because this camera has Wi-Fi, it means that the videos you can take, you can easily send to your smartphone, and it won't take up a lot of your storage that you don't have on your phone, because who actually has storage on their phones? Capabilities. I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of it. I'm just going to tell you my opinion from my usage. I've had this camera for over a year. It takes great photos. It's not a low light beast, but with the right lighting and in the right settings, you can take really good photos. It shoots 1080p up to 60 frames per second, and at 4K you can shoot up to 30 frames per second, which is still pretty good for this little camera. It also shoots 120 frames per second at 720p, which is absolutely fine, especially for social media. So if you're making portrait videos and you want to do them in very slow motion, it'll be fine, especially for stories and for just your Instagram posts, because Instagram compresses the hell out of all your footage anyway. So the controls are actually limited on this camera. That's not one thing that I would say, but because you can use it as a touch screen, you can very quickly change your settings. So I've never found myself struggling to change settings. There's only one wheel on this camera, this one here, but it works really well because if you press the up arrows, you can switch between shutter speed and your aperture, and if you press the M function button, you can actually jump to your ISO and change your ISO just like that, which makes it quite user-friendly if you want to change settings on the go. Just a matter of getting used to it. There is a menu where you can have your own My Menu tab, and that's quite useful, especially if you know what menus and what functions you really want to select. Another thing about the capabilities of this camera is its autofocusing capabilities. It always has me in focus, it always works, especially if you're vlogging, especially when you're doing talking head stuff like this. You can tap to focus whenever you want, so it's great. Manual focusing is possible in this camera, of course it is, but some of the lenses that you get, they're all focused by wire, and the peaking functionalities of this camera are very weak. The peaking lines are very light and faint, so you don't really see them as well as you do on a Sony a7 III, for example. Versatility. Yeah, it can take okay slow motion. Yeah, it can shoot 1080p 60, which is all you really need. But this camera does very nice time lapses. There has been many times where I've chosen to use this to do time lapses over my Sony a7 III, because firstly, it's so easy to set up. You get really nice files out of it, and you can shoot 4K time lapses no problem. Another thing about Versatility is the tilt screen. Tilt screen makes it great when you have really awkward angles and you need to film. This has been very useful in interviews. There have been many times where I've not had a place to sit that is easy for me to see the camera. So having a tilt screen just like at this weird position where I'm sitting down like this or something is great. It's also very nice and light. I can fit this camera in some of my jacket pockets. It's actually ridiculous. Another thing about the Versatility is that the color science is great, which means that you probably won't have to do any color grading afterwards. If you need to just grab footage and put it online, makes it easier. Limitations. So the reason I didn't say this camera was for professional filmmakers or professional videographers that are more advanced, like 10 years in, because there are limitations that this camera has that other cameras don't have for a higher budget. And if you're in that sort of position as a professional videographer, you probably would have the budget to get something much better. Also, no camera is perfect. 4K. 4K limitation is quite huge. Firstly, there's a huge rolling shutter with it. So if you move the camera a little bit, you get quite a lot of rolling shutter, which is not very good. It means that you can't really use it handheld, otherwise you're gonna get a headache when you watch your footage back, speaking from experience. On top of that, the 4K has a huge crop factor. It does mean that you're limited with the gear that you have to shoot in 4K, especially if you're in small rooms. Another limitation is its low light capabilities. Unless you're using a 1.8 lens or below that, it's very hard to get very low noise footage. You do have to spend some money on low light lenses with fast apertures like the 22mm lens. If you're struggling to decide which lenses to get for this camera, I did a video where I compared two of my favorite lenses, the 22mm and the 50mm 1.8. The following two limitations are actually quite huge and they affect me quite a lot now that I'm at a level where I do more professional work, and that is firstly color sign. Yeah, the color science is great in this camera. It comes out looking like a charm, but fat chance try color grading it. There is no log profile, and if you shoot with low contrast and low saturation, there isn't a lot of dynamic range from this camera anyway, so you can't really bring back a lot of the highlights and shadows that you want to, and you probably will introduce a lot of noise to your footage as well. I used this camera recently in an interview where I had the SONY a7 III, the Canon M50 as my A and B cams, and it was very difficult for me to actually match the colors, and it puts me quite in a weird position because I love this camera and I want to use it for small things, but in my professional work I'm gonna have to get another B cam to match the colors. The second is the headphone jack. There is no headphone jack. That is quite a deal breaker for some people, because if you want to listen to your footage or your audio, you have to kind of awkwardly play it back and listen whilst your client is just there like waiting for the interview. It happened to me, it's a true story. Yeah, having no headphone jack kind of sucks, but I did a video up here where I talk about the best ways to get nice crisp audio out of this camera, and one of the methods was to set the audio levels very low so that you can bring them up later, which not only saves you on noise but also makes sure you don't peak and solves the whole problem of not having an audio jack. So yeah, these are my reasons for why this camera is a very good camera for social media creators, content creators, and beginning filmmakers, because it was my camera that I used for studying my filmmaking. Before I used to use a lot of big camcorders. Having something that was smaller made it easier for me to do content on the go for clients that don't want to have a large production crew come to their place. If you're not doing a lot of professional work or things that are going to go on big screens that need a high quality, clear visuals, or you need to color grade, then this camera is just for you. It's also very fun. It's a fun camera. Like, cameras shouldn't just be these tools for just your work that you do or the hard labor that you do. They should be fun to use, and this camera is fun to use. So yeah, these are my reasons. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave it a like and comment below if it helped you, and if you agree with what I was saying, and make sure to subscribe and hit that bell button if you want to be notified when I make more videos. See you in the next one.